I would like to call to order the Highland Park Board of Education hybrid workshop voting meeting on Monday, August 24th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Courier News and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening.
Dr. Beatty.
Here.
Ms. Cassell-Dunn. Dr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Maldonado.
Here.
Dr. Pixley. Ms. Preuss. Dr. Schoolman. Ms. Stanio.
Here.
Ms. Vardman.
Here. Be it resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act and the Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss matters related to personnel matters. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10:4 through 13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. I move that we recess to executive session.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will now reconvene to regular session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. Dr. Beatty.
Here.
Ms. Cassell-Dunn.
Here.
Dr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Maldonado.
Here.
Dr. Pixley.
Here.
Ms. Preuss. Dr. Schoolman.
Here.
Ms. Stanio.
Here.
Ms. Vardman.
Here. Okay, and now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we had 3 communications since our last meeting. One about the cell phone restrictions, one on AI policy, and one requesting a student transfer. Now we have the approval of minutes. I move the approval of minutes.
Second.
Dr. Beatty.
Yes.
Ms. Cassell-Dunn.
Yes.
Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado. Dr. Pixley. Dr. Pixley. Ms. Preuss. Dr. Schoolman.
Yes.
Ms. Stanio.
Yes.
Ms. Vardman.
Yes. And now we can move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody. So I have 3 reports tonight. The first 2 I'll try to make pretty quick because I feel like we're mostly here probably for the third one. So I'll try to get through the 2 yearly ones relatively quickly. So my first one is on our spring SSDS data, which is a reporting system that we use for some student data when we have to remove students from the learning environment. So it's the student safety data system, which collects 2 types of information. So I'll kind of breeze through this because I do this twice a year, so some of it's a repeat. The 2 types of information are incidents of violence, vandalism, harassment, intimidation or bullying, weapon offenses, substance offenses, restraint, seclusion, and any other incident leading to the removal of school or from school. So that can either be in school or out of school suspensions. It also reports our HIP trainings and programs. We have to do the report twice a year. So there was a report earlier in the winter for the first half of the year data, and then now going in toward the end of the year, this is our report on the second half of the year data. So just to recap, when you look at the data, what's important to note is that some of our data can be multiple offenses for one incident, meaning that a single incident can consist of multiple incident types. So for example, a student might make a criminal threat to another student while holding a knife. So this is one incident, but gets reported twice on the report. So one under violence and one under weapon. Or criminal threat and then weapon use. Another way that you could see the data are multiple offenders for multiple incidences. So if 4 students are in one fight, then the 4 goes there. So it's an incident per student. So that is also something that you could see. So some of the commonly used definitions, what does a fight mean? So these are definitions that we use internally, the administration uses when reporting in the SSDS. For the state. So a fight is a mutual engagement in a physical confrontation in which the offenders understood that confrontation may result in bodily injury to either party. It does not include a verbal confrontation or a minor confrontation, such as a shoving match. And each participant must be classified as an offender in there. So like when a fight happens, it's not just the person, like if I'm fighting somebody else, the other person also gets reported as the SSDS. So that would be another example where it would be 2 on that in that category. An assault is a person that attempts to cause or purposely, knowingly, or recklessly causes bodily injury to another person. Physical restraints is when the use of personal restriction, any kind of personal restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a student to move all or portion of their body. So I know I've shared this in the past, but our staff is trained and handled with care. So in the event that a student is a threat to themselves or others, our staff are trained in verbal de-escalation techniques, and then if needed, physical restraint. So that anytime we physically restrain a child, we do have to report that. And then threat simple is an attempt by physical menace, verbal threats to put another in fear of bodily injury. The offender knew that the threat could make the victim fearful. That one's a bit harder to try to get at. So that's kind of a subjective judgment call sometimes by administration based on the investigation to see if that was, if they knowingly were doing that. And then other incidences leading to removal or any other incident not included in the guidebook that we have that takes place on or off school grounds that result in a disciplinary removal for at least 1/2 day must be reported. So this could also include that if a child gets an in-school suspended for too many cuts or something like that, cutting class, things like that, those would be in that category as an example. So for the reporting period from January 1 of 2026 to June 30th at the end of the year, the high school reported 3 total incidences, 1 of violence and 2 of substances. The violent incident was an assault. Middle school had 10 total incidences for the second half of the year, 2 violence, 3 substance, and 5 were HIB confirmed. Of the violence, both of them were fights. Bartle, there were 5 total incidences, 4 violence and 1 HIB confirmed. Of the violence ones, although the number doesn't calculate, I'll have to check on that one. But I believe 3 assaults and 1 were fight. In terms of other incidences leading to removal, the high school reported 14, middle school reported 14, Bartle recorded 4, and Irving recorded 0. For alleged HIBs, high school 0, middle school 0, Bartle 2, Irving none. For restraints, the high school reported 0 restraints for the second half of the year, middle school 0, Bartle 0, and Irving had 3. Trainings completed, so these are any trainings around HIBs that we do. And this is the second half of the year. So just note that if they're low, sometimes we front end a lot of our training, which you'll see when I do the comparison slide shortly. So the trainings for the second half of the year, the high school did none, middle school did 1, Bartle did 7, and Irving did none. Programs completed, high school 1 for the second half of the year, middle school had 2, Bartle had 15, and Irving had 3. So the comparison chart, how do we do the first reporting period for the first half of the year versus the second half of the year? And then I have a couple additional slides that'll compare how our data looks from last year as well. So the red marks the first half of the year, September to December, and black is January to June. So the high school had 1 incident in the first half of the year and 3 in the second. Middle school had 15 in the first half of the year 10 in the second. Bartle had 3 in the first half of the year versus 5 in the second half of the year, and then Irving 0 across the board. So although there was a slight uptick at the high school, overall the numbers remained pretty low, which was great. Again, removing students from the learning environment for those particular, for violence, vandalism, substances, or weapons are great numbers. And middle school ticked down the second half of the year, which is great to see as well. Bartle a slight uptick, but nothing alarming. In terms of other incidences leading to removal, there was an uptick at the high school for the second half of the year. They had 6 at the first half, 14 at the second. And then here's where you can see they had 1 alleged hit the first half of the year. They had 14 trainings completed for the first half of the year, so they front loaded their trainings, and 9 programs completed the first half of the year. For middle school, they had 13 incidences leading to removal the first half, 14 for the second. 1 HIB alleged the first half of the year, 21 trainings completed the first half of the year, and 8 programs completed the first half, or 10 for the year. Bartle had 1 incident leading to removal back between September and December, and then the 4 for the second half. 1 alleged HIB the first half versus 2 the second. 12 trainings completed the first half, and then 7 the second half, 35 programs the first half of the year, and then the 15 programs the second half of the year. So you can see we front load a lot of the training and the programs. Irving, 0 incidences, 0 alleged HIBs. They had 5 total restraints on the year, 7 total trainings completed, and then 22 programs in the first half of the year versus 3 in the second half of the year. I remember our principal resigned in late spring, so it makes sense that maybe some of those numbers dropped as well for Irving. In terms of comparison from 2024-25 to 25-26 school year, the blue represents the 24-25, the previous year, and then this past year is 25-26. So you can see in terms of overall, the high school numbers completely have dropped a lot in terms of total incidences. From the year prior, they had 14 to this past year, 4 in this category of violence, vandalism, substances, or weapons. Middle school had 26 the previous year and 25 this past year. Bartle had 10 the previous year and then 8, and then Irving 0 across the board. In terms of other incidents leading to removal, high school had 15 the previous year and then versus the 20. Middle school had 65 before, and now they have 27. So I want to clap up the middle school, because I think we've been seeing through the years that over the past year or two, that those numbers have been declining. So kudos to the middle school for that great achievement. Bartle had 10, and then in the previous year and 5. So great work for Bartle there as well. And then of course, we don't remove the students at Irving, so that number will always be 0. They don't get removed from their learning environment. So that number is 0, but I will highlight they still complete a good number of programs and trainings. But I will indicate too, our restraints are down, and that's really important. We have 0 seclusions. We don't seclude children. But the great work to see that our students are not a threat to themselves or others, and that number is declining, which means our staff are doing great work around Handle with Care. I think the work around Nurtured Heart has been really helpful to be able to regulate students and get them in a situation where if they're dysregulated, that they're not harming themselves or other people, and that we have to physically restrain them. So that's great. The great work that we're doing with culture and climate really comes out in this type of work. In addition, after the last time I presented, I know y'all asked questions about what kind of programs and things like that. So I wanted to include that for this presentation. So some of the programs that are completed by the staff for training included, but not limited to, things like district HIP policy with bullying prevention instruction. So everybody reviews annually our anti-bullying policy. In addition, there is training around bullying prevention. That happens every year. This past year, the teachers and staff completed conflict resolution training, suicide prevention training, school culture and climate improvement trainings, and social norms training. So a lot of that work we're doing around Nurtured Heart, conscious discipline, responsive classroom, restorative practices, all of those are great ways to train our staff to improve our culture and climate that hopefully will continue to make these numbers decrease. And then there's programs completed by the students that we report. Here's just a snapshot. Again, there's so many of them, but these are just some examples I wanted to highlight. Wear Orange for Unity Day, morning meetings and announcements, week of respect, being kind, school family meetings, golden owls. They do the Lead You Assembly. I know they do that at Bartle and Middle School, and those are really fun. If you've ever seen a Lead You Assembly, they're a whole lot of fun. Thanksgiving food collection, School Violence Prevention Week, where we do workshops, Diversity Day, things like that. So there's a whole lot of programming that the students do as well. So that concludes this report. I'll open it up to the board for questions or comments. And while doing so, we'll switch to the next presentation.
Question. All right. One of the issues, or I guess topics that is this on?
Yes.
Can't tell.
You just make sure you get really close to it.
Okay. One of the topics we talked about a lot last year and had some reports on was the restorative practices and sort of, how well that could work without necessary resources and staffing, how we could make it work and all this kind of thing. I was wondering if you have any insights or things to share about how restorative justice is kind of being pursued in the schools, whether you think it's part of the story, whether it's I don't think we've allotted extra resources to it. We don't really have those extra resources, but is it sort of still accomplishing some of its goals? And if so, so how is that happening?
Yeah, I think by seeing the numbers that they're declining, one of the things that isn't reported here are repeat offenders. And at the end of the day, we love kids. Sometimes kids are kids and they do silly things, right? But the data that we like to track is on repeat offenders. So unfortunately, this reporting doesn't exactly give us that, but that's definitely something that we can pull up in an upcoming equity and excellence meeting to unpack a little bit more. The repeat offenders, which is what we were trying to chart, because if our work on restorative practices, meaning that, there's obviously logical consequences for students, but the fact that if they are able to restore themselves back to the school community, to the environment, to repair that harm, hopefully the idea is that they've learned a lesson and that they're able to then be integrated back into the school in a positive way and feel that they've repaired that harm to develop those relationships with their peers. Then they shouldn't be a repeat offender. And so the fact that that number is declining just shows me probably that some of that work is happening. To give specific data around that, I don't have that on me, but we can certainly follow up with that in equity and excellence to sort of unpack that and look at the repeat offenders. But I will say that our staff is really well versed in restorative practices now. They do a lot of that restorative work either locally in the classes. I've seen the staff members pull, circles in their classrooms to have conversations around how, there was disruption in the classroom and how do we operate around that. To work with administration. I see, Coach Harrison in shaking his head aggressively yes in the audience. So I know that work is happening. He does a lot of that work and our administrators as well. So I know a lot of that work is happening, but we can pull some of that data specifically.
Yeah, I mean, these are great numbers, especially in middle school. And I've had my eye on that for a while. People in the community are watching tonight. I think we should feel really good about the progress being made. The administration, everyone in the schools working so hard, and especially without the influx of resources we'd love to have, sort of just continued, work with these programs seems to be having results, which is great.
Yeah, and again, that buy-in is really important. I think the staff that you have here, from administration to our teachers to our support staff to everyone, there is a lot of buy-in that it works, and we know it works. And I think that turnkeying of training to each other, I think, has been really, really successful. Other questions or comments from the board?
I'd just like to say, like, the change in these numbers over the past 4 years or so is really remarkable. And, something I think we all agree on is that, having kids in classrooms, but also safe schools as both a workplace and a place for student learning is extraordinarily important. And so, seeing these results over the last few years is really absolutely fantastic.
The cell phone ban at middle school helped a lot. So thank you to the board for passing that.
I did have a question, maybe it's just a small detail, but when it says weapons, is that anything like picking up a pencil can be considered a weapon if it's
would be
intent to harm?
To cause harm, yeah. I mean, but our students aren't really, there's some other things that are weapons that are not pencils that they're using. Okay. All right, so I'll move on to my next presentation. So typically this time of year, we report on 3 data sets at the same time. Our access scores, which is for our multi-language learners, our NJGPA scores, which are for 11th graders for graduation requirement, and our third are on JSLA scores. Well, we haven't gotten the latter 2 yet. We just got our GPA scores, but not enough time to be able to produce them for a presentation tonight. So you're getting the access scores, but other scores coming soon. And JSLA, they anticipate maybe late fall, early winter because of the change in how they administer the test. So our access test results, there we go, is a state required assessment in 4 skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening for students receiving services in language instruction in a language instruction educational program. It's a test that's mostly administered online to all of our multi-language learners. Even those who have declined services must sit for the access test. So what you'll see in our data reporting is that if they are flagged as a multi-language learner in our system, they have to take the test. And we do have some families that opt students out of those services. Teachers use multiple measures, including a state mandated cutoff score, which is a 4.5, to determine if a student exits from or remains in their program. So we have 4 really amazing ESL teachers, and they've over their years have seen about a 4.5 is a good score to be able to move our students out of our ESL programming. But they are still monitored for 2 years after that. So there's 6 different levels, from entering, emerging, developing, where we like to see them again a 4.5, like expanding to bridging, and then reaching. I'm not going to read them all. This presentation, like all the other ones, will be available in the board bulletin. So our enrollment in the students requiring language instruction educational program. So our enrollment at Irving, we have 36. So over the years, so blue represents 2024, orange 2025, and the green is this past year 2026. So you can see at Irving, I mean, relatively consistent, although they've declined. The number of students have declined 10 in 3 years. Bartle, 51, 45, and then 44. So we're staying relatively constant about at Bartle for our students qualifying in this program. Middle school, slight uptick at 31 versus 28 or 27. And then high school students, we had 34 in 2024, 48 in 2025, and 42 in 2026. And just to let you know, for the 2026 in the program, there's 57 students that have been in there less than a year. So that's really important to note, that a lot of our students that come in, especially at Irving, but really at Irving, and then sometimes even at Bartle, that they're coming in first time in school sometimes, especially at Irving, obviously. So they're obviously going to be less at Irving. They're going to be less than a year. So we have 57 students less than a year, 40 students in the program for about 1 year. We have a total of 149 students. And then just to let you know that the 30 plus preschool students are not included in this. There's no access test for preschool students. And then we have 7 students that are not reflected in our data set because of parent refusals to be in our program. So the overall proficiency, again, blue represents 2 years ago, 2025 is orange, and green is last year, 2026. So the overall proficiencies, you can see that the majority of our students are in levels 1 through 3. But also what's not reflected in here is if students make gain of a 4.5, even if it's that at the mid-year mark, they transfer them out. So the end of year, this was, I think, February or March was when these tests were taken. So if earlier on the year they scored a 4.5, they exit out of the program, so they wouldn't be included in this data set. So that's why it's important to know when we see the area of bridging to reaching, those low numbers are low. That's not a reflection that our students are not being successful in our MLL program. It's just that those successful ones, we score out and get them to other classes, so they don't have to take ESL classes, and so that why they wouldn't be included in our data set. So, but you can see a lot of them are entering, emerging, or developing, and then we have some in the expanding category. which is actually really great to see toward the end of the year. That means they are making that progress to exit out then for the following year. So we're not too alarmed with the numbers. That's pretty typical, especially considering the bulk of our population at Irving and Bartle would be in one of those three categories. And then here is the proficiency level by school. Again, so right, that just kind of shows as well. You can see the Ms. Rodriguez did add the numbers. So I know we talked about this in curriculum instruction this past week. Ms. Rodriguez did add the numbers for me. So 16 students were exited, 7 by the access test and 9 by screener. So our ESL teachers do have the ability, like I said, there's multiple measures. So they'll continuously screen students throughout the course of the year. And then as students hit their achievement, they exit them out. So that was 9 students in total and 7 that exited out from the access test. So you can see here in terms of our results, in this case, that darker blue is entering, the orange is emerging, green is developing, the teal-ish color or aqua is expanding, the purple is bridging, and then the lighter green is reaching. So you can see that there's no reaching, but you see at Irving, mostly in the 1 or 2 categories, which makes sense for that age group. Again, same with Bartle, but the fact that you see them now switching to developing and expanding is really great data. That means they're improving their skills. And then, you know, middle school, again, you want to see that shift developing and expanding. And then, you know, hopefully that move at the high school. But again, they're not students that are started in Irving and now they're in high school. It's that they might come to us flagged when they register as ESL, right? So a lot of our students come as refugees and coming from war-torn countries or places like that where they don't have any English and they come in middle and high school. So it's not like the NJSLA where these are homegrown students and you're like, well, why, if they started in Irving, why are they still not reaching? Here, it's because it's just a whole different set of students. So you really can't compare one year from another, other than to show you that the majority of our students are, they do make some really great progress, and we have really amazing ESL teachers that do some phenomenal work. And what that work is, great. I'm glad that I was prepared for that. In terms of supports and intervention, we worked this past year to revise curriculum for the intermediate and advanced students in grades 6 to 8, with the addition bringing back Ms. Yeager back to the middle school. I know you've seen it around the discipline report, but our students in that programming have gotten a tremendous amount of support from Ms. Yeager. The parents already know her. She's been able to develop really great relationships and noticed that there were some areas in need of improvement in the curriculum. So we've worked on that. We facilitate collaboration with an instructional consultant to provide group and individualized coaching and support for our ESL teachers. Toward the end of the year, I popped into some of their training, specifically to the four teachers, and they were having some really rich conversations for coaching to strengthen instructional delivery. And we promote collaborative planning and vertical articulation across the ESL department to ensure alignment of language goals and instruction across all grade levels. In addition, I also want to note that we do provide shelter instruction for our general education teachers, and that's to support those ESL students in the classroom as well. So our teachers are trained in sheltered instruction, and our ESL teachers do a really great job of helping with gen ed teachers to provide support in classes for those students as well. Any questions from the board or comments?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Sarah from the sky?
Yeah, Sarah from the sky, go ahead.
Sarah from the sky. You know, I just want to say this to me is kind of a representative of a broader strategy that I think we're seeing a lot of gains. And as we see some of those reports coming out as well, when you think about, Christina, you touched on it, but the really important thing is by design, folks are struggling, right? So when you see their performance, it's going to be on the lower end. However, what's really incredible about this is the ability to rotate folks out of the program. And I think that's like not to be understated that maybe 3-4 years ago, it was much harder for us, not just with the ESL population, but the broader population to kind of understand how folks are doing and provide the right targeted supports. And so for me, this is just, it was good to see and good to continue to see folks being able to rotate out these programs, get what they need, get the programming they need. And I would just say for Ms. Rodriguez and the team, what an excellent job that they are doing there, because this is a capability that's, you know, it's a lot of data, it's a lot of things we're sorting through, but being able to make it actionable is pretty awesome.
Thank you.
I think you talked about everything we talked about in committee. The one thing I wanted to highlight is that in this next year, we'll have Linkit as well to track kind of individual growth across this. So having that tool will kind of help us see, I think, some of those students who are progressing and then eventually exiting. And so that's something that we're doing to look forward to as well.
And I know we're catching kids at, various times, right? But do we know like kind of an average of how long kids stay in the program?
I mean, that would probably depend on the school for each grade span. So I'd probably have to look to see because we have to monitor them 2 years after as well. So the data we probably collect is, probably indicative of their whole package, their whole thing. So I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's something we could definitely pull. Absolutely.
An interesting thing to see.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this looks like there's some excellent work being done there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, without further ado, I have a feeling that everyone is here. I appreciate people coming in person to see our next presentation. So I'm going to invite Dr. Mark Borlero up to speak about an annual report, which we've never done. So the first annual report of the athletics department. Dr. Borlero, would you like the clicker or do you want me to click through for you? Okay. Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Suska, and thank you to the board for this opportunity to share kind of where Owls Athletics is after year one. Before I get into the numbers and the accomplishments, I want to make one thing clear, from the very start, that this is not about one person. It's about our students and everyone who shows up for them every day. A lot of our coaches, our teachers, our nurses, our families, and our community partners, district leadership, and the entire school community. Most importantly, it's about our student athletes. They showed up, they competed, and they represented Highland Park with pride. Tonight, I'm here to share their story, celebrate their successes, and talk about where we go next. Let's see. Maybe two. Oh, there we go. So when we talk about Highland Park Athletics, we're really talking about students and the opportunities we create for them. This past year, we served 519 student athletes across our middle school and high school programs. That's nearly 1/3 of the entire district population. 296 high school student athletes across 15 programs, with 104 competing in more than one sport. 223 middle school student athletes across 10 programs, including 33 multi-sport athletes. We are proud of the diversity of the students we serve. Our programs represent students from a broad range of backgrounds, including white, Hispanic, Latino, Black, African American, Asian, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, with strong gender representation across the board. Participation at the high school level approaches an even split between male and female student athletes, and both groups are strongly represented at the middle school level as well. At the middle school, participation is pretty balanced across grades. We have 31% participants in the 6th grade, 34.5% each in 7th and 8th grade. That balance matters because our middle school programs are building the foundation for our high school pipeline. At the high school level, 11th grade is our largest cohort at 30.7%. Now that tells us something very important. It tells us that athletics is not simply attracting students, it's retaining them. As students move through high school, they grow more connected to their coaches, to their teammates, their programs, and to the school. By junior year, we see the strongest combination of that experience, that retention, and that engagement. Now, you'll also see that our freshman participation rate at the high school is our lowest. Now, I don't see that necessarily as a barrier. I see that as an opportunity, not just a statistic on the slide. We're working with our high school coaches to reach 8th grade students before they arrive into high school in the 9th grade. so they understand start dates, expectations, and opportunities before day one. We're also planning more outreach through lunchtime engagement at both schools with coaches and student athletes on hand to answer any questions that students may have as we head into the next year so that they can see a path into that program that they may be interested in. And the goal is simple: to reduce the barriers before they exist. We build that connection before a student ever walks through our doors. And we strengthen that pipeline from 8th grade all the way through graduation. Because these numbers to me aren't just numbers, right? They are 519 students who have a chance to compete. It's a chance to build relationships, develop confidence, learn accountability, and feel like they belong. That is who we serve. Yeah. Let me see.
Sorry, you might see it's the big button. Yeah, it just could be your distance. Sorry.
All right, so year one accomplishments. Some of the most important work we did this year will never make a headline, but from a student and family perspective, it may be the most important work we've done of all. When a student puts on a Highland Park uniform, their family is really trusting us with something precious, their child. Our job is to make sure that the student enters an environment that's safe, organized, prepared, and focused on their well-being. In year one, we built the infrastructure behind that trust: a comprehensive athletics handbook grounded in NJSIAA and NFHS standards, along with board policy and regulations. We developed emergency action plans at every athletic venue, including Donaldson and Johnson Park. We have EMS and physician coverage at every home football game. We recently, which we'll get into, implemented baseline concussion testing and a formal student athlete code of conduct policy. These are not policies just sitting in a binder, okay? They are systems that tell our students and families, we're ready for you. I want to thank Dr. Womack, our team physician, for his partnership, along with our nursing staff, our coaches, our families, community partners, and district leadership, and the Board of Education, of course, all of whom helped move all this work, forward throughout the year. Year one was about building that foundation. Now our job is to strengthen it, because when a student needs us the most, we don't want them to encounter any improvisation. We want them to encounter a prepared team, a clear plan, and adults who know exactly what to do. So, whoop, one back, there you go. Some sports medicine collaborations. We recognized early that we could build a strong sports medicine program by surrounding our students with expertise we couldn't really provide alone. I want to recognize our partners: RWJ Rutgers Nursing, JAG Physical Therapy, Professional Physical Therapy, Kessler Rehab, and the New Jersey Devils. These are not just names on this slide. These are relationships that reach our students directly through healthcare expertise, rehabilitation, education, professional development, equipment, and real exposure to careers in healthcare and sports medicine. They strengthen our ability to prevent injuries, treat them correctly, rehabilitate our students, and get them back safely to what they love doing in playing sports. Our goal is to keep building on this sports medicine ecosystem, around our students, one that's focused not just on treating the injuries, but on prevention, education, early intervention, rehab, and the overall well-being of our students. These organizations chose to invest their time, expertise, and resources into Highland Park athletics and sports medicine. And, we're grateful, and we don't take that investment, for granted. So kind of continuing on sports medicine, what we've really done last year is pride ourselves on really elevating that standard of care. And in this slide, I want to speak directly to athlete safety, because nothing we do matters more than protecting our athletes and our students. During the fall 2025 season, there were several significant injuries that just really reinforced to me how much preparation and medical coverage really mattered. Some of you may have been in attendance. Our first football scrimmage last year, we experienced a cervical spine injury that required approximately 45 minutes of neck stabilization by myself while we waited for EMS. Fortunately, the student received the care they needed and is doing well today. But the experience reinforced something every student and family deserves. When an emergency happens, the system needs to be already ready. Not getting ready, but already ready to be implemented. So we focused on what we could do and build going forward. We established standing orders with Dr. Womack. All right, we formalized those emergency action plans. We strengthened concussion documentation and symptom tracking. We launched the baseline concussion testing in collaboration with Kessler. We established concussion management committee consisting of myself, Dr. Womack, and the experts at Kessler. And we implemented EMS and physician coverage, as I stated previously, at every home varsity and JV football game. And we're not stopping there. We're working to expand that baseline concussion testing across more of our programs, continue that emergency preparedness and education, and regularly review our protocols and keep strengthening that healthcare network centered around our student athletes. The biggest change here is not any single policy or test that we implement. It's really the philosophy that's behind the program. You know, we're moving towards a more proactive sports medicine model that's built on prevention, that preparation, early recognition, the treatment, and that safe return to play. No student, okay, should ever have to choose between protecting their health and continuing to compete. You know, our job is to make sure that system protects every one of our student athletes. All right, here we're going to get into a little bit on the standardization of our uniforms across our programs. And I want to walk you through a finding from this past year that we identified and are now actively addressing because it directly affects our student athlete experience. As we reviewed our uniform inventory across the entire program, we found an opportunity to bring greater consistency to how the uniforms were purchased, how they're managed, and how they were distributed. We found differences in sizing and quantities from team to team, duplicate roster numbers, mismatched pieces, and inconsistencies that were most noticeable at the varsity level. These issues are not simply cosmetic. All right. In some instances, they resulted in penalties from game officials and formal notices from NJSIAA across multiple sports. We also found visible wear, staining, and discoloration on white uniforms specifically, along with real differences in quality and quantity from one program to another. For me, when I found this out, it really became a student-centered issue to me. Every student athlete who puts on a Highland Park uniform should feel they're receiving that same level of care, regardless of the sport they play. And they should be proud of what they're wearing, confident it meets the competition standards, and know that their program is supported the same way every other program is. And it also matters because uniforms are one of the most visible representations of our school. When our students compete, they represent Highland Park. What our community sees on the field or court, to me, should reflect that pride, that organization, and standard we expect across the entire athletics program. So we're building a standardized approach, consistent purchasing cycles, better inventory management, standardizing quantities and sizing, and uniforms that meet those competition requirements, while still letting each sport kind of keep its own identity. And I want to be clear, the goal here simply is not just buying new uniforms. Okay, the goal is a system where our students consistently receive equipment that is safe, that is appropriate, that is competition ready, and something that they're proud to wear. Whether a student is playing varsity football, middle school soccer, or running cross country, they should have that same confidence that their school invested in them and giving them what they need to represent Highland Park with that pride. Our students should never have to wonder if their uniform meets that standard. They should simply put it on, wear the owl across their chest, and know that they're ready to compete. So a little bit about transportation. To me, that's also part of our student safety initiative. The student athlete experience, to me, does not It starts the moment a student gets on the bus, not when the game starts. This year, we evaluated our transportation system and identified opportunities to create greater consistency, reliability, and appropriate capacity. We partnered with ABC Transportation and established a bus confirmation protocol, so transportation is secured in advance. We provided 2 buses for all-away varsity football games, giving our students and our coaches appropriate space to safely accommodate equipment and also maintaining the safety of our student athletes. We secured transportation for our cheerleading program throughout the entirety of the away football season. And also to note, all of our coaches also get the bus number, the driver's cell phone number to them before they depart for every game. So if there's ever a need to contact the bus driver directly or the company, they have all that information. Instead of them coming to me to then go to them, they have a direct access to the source there. And that matters because equity in athletics means every program has the resources, it needs to fully participate. This is about more than buses. It's about reliability. Families should be able to trust that when their child leaves Highland Park for an away game, there's a safe, dependable plan to get them there, but to also get them home. And that's the standard we're building across athletics. Identify the need, build the solution, and really make it sustainable. So here we're going to talk about a little bit about expanding kind of our resources, as many of you may have heard, through kind of external funding. Another major priority has been kind of expanding those resources without placing the full burden on a district budget. Recently, we were awarded a little over $68,000 through the New Jersey Local Recreation Improvement Grant. This will help fund a new football field sound system. It'll help us get volleyball inserts at our high school gym and a new gym wall divider in Bartle School. We also secured more than $20,000 worth of equipment through our Leveling the Playing Field grant down in Philadelphia. That was just in 2025-26 alone. And that partnership and grant renews annually with monetary cap and is also open to every PE teacher, to the entire district. Anybody can go down that we have access to. It's mostly refurbished equipment. Coach Harrison and I went down last year and they had the Philadelphia Eagles Day where we were able to get, NFL Eagles pants and cleats and mouth guards and stuff that's still being used today. Going back to kind of that volleyball investment, to me, out of all of these, that kind of matters the most in a very concrete way. It allows our JV and varsity girls volleyball programs to move into the high school gym, giving them a practice and competition environment that really matches their level of commitment. Altogether, when we do the math, it's a little more than $148,000 in additional resources that were generated or secured during 25-26. But the number isn't the point here. To me, what matters is what those resources really make possible, right? We can get better facilities, better equipment, better opportunities, and most importantly, we're reducing fewer barriers that are present for participation. Every outside dollar we secure is another chance to reinvest in our students. We're not simply looking for more money, we're looking for more opportunities, for our kids. This is the part I'm probably proudest to share because it belongs entirely, to the kids. And we have a few of them in here tonight that, are all division. We have a GMC, I think, Girls Freshman of the Year sitting here. We have our GMC All-Star and all division athletes, which I'm tremendously proud. And as you guys see in kind of emails and notices that go out, just how proud we are. But some others, Jahan Mladnik this year broke the all-time girls soccer career goal scored for Highland Park. Cooper Ballantyne reached 1,000 career points for the first time in boys basketball in 24 years. Some others, Costa Hansula surpassed 1,000 career receiving yards and won a division title in hurdles. Across tennis, track, baseball, volleyball, and other programs, our student athletes earned all division and all county recognition. But I want to highlight something that means just as much to me as any record, and that's the sportsmanship. Girls cross country, boys soccer, and our football program were all recognized with sportsmanship awards last year, including the Bill Denny Rutgers Award for football. And those awards aren't about statistics at all. They're more about how our students carry themselves, how they treat their opponents, how they respond to adversity, and how they represent Highland Park. And that's also a reflection, of many of our coaches in the room tonight. And I want to recognize two who aren't here, Coach Ruckdashell and Coach Washington, who each earned their 200th career victory last season. 200 wins, is an incredible accomplishment. But behind every one of those wins, to me, is hundreds of students who had a coach show up for them, challenge them, and really believe in them. And we want to develop, successful student athletes. But more than that, we want to develop successful young people. Because the athletic program isn't how many games we win, and our coaches know that. It's whether the students who come through our program leave better prepared for whatever may come next when they exit Highland Park. These are just some other students' accomplishments up there. All right, so the future, as proud as I am of year one, this next part is the most important, and it's kind of where we're going. Our priorities are intentionally simple and intentionally student-centered. We're standardizing our return to learn. Many of you have heard the term return to play, but just as important of getting a student athlete back on the field is how do we prepare them to return to the classroom. So student recovery from specifically a concussion, needs nurses, counselors, teachers, families, coaches, athletic trainers, and healthcare providers working from the same plan together. And we are currently in the process of standardizing that for all of our not only student athletes, but all athletes that may sustain a concussion as part of their planning. We are continuing to fight chronic absenteeism. Athletics will continue to be a part of that district's broader work here. A team, a coach, and teammates can be powerful connection to school. And when we intend to use that connection to keep students engaged, and in fact, diving into some research, there was a national study. They surveyed about 250,000 students and found that high school students have about 20% fewer absences compared to non-athletes. The national average is about roughly 10%. Exploring new opportunities. We're constantly in talks about exploring girls wrestling, boys volleyball, and potentially a girls flag football. We had more than 100 students take part in the 2025 Powder Puff game last year, of which I was the cheer captain. That told us something loud and clear. There's an interest and there's a demand, for more opportunities. We're also, as we mentioned, kind of strengthening that pipeline. We have 223 middle school student athletes today. Our goal is to keep those student athletes connected to athletics all the way through high school. So they graduate as owls and as student athletes. So we're also continuing traditions like, many of you have seen the varsity jackets and our annual varsity awards banquet, because sometimes the smallest thing, carry the biggest weight to a student. And those moments tell the student, we saw your effort, we recognize you, and that you mattered. And finally, we're deepening our bridge between academics and athletics as we head into year two. We're expanding our biweekly academic progress reporting and strengthening communication between our coaches and teachers. We want coaches to know, how their students are, how their athletes are doing in the classroom. We want teachers to understand the demands their student athletes are balancing, and we want families to know that we're focused on both halves of their child's experience here. Athletics, should reinforce that educational mission of the district. It should never operate apart from it. My motto I always use, in the term student first, athlete second, and that's not just a slogan. To me, it's a philosophy behind everything that I've shared tonight. Our goal is, isn't simply more teams and more athletes. It's better access, better communication, better support and better opportunities. So every student who participates leaves Highland Park more confident, more connected, more resilient, and more prepared for life after high school. And I want to kind of close where we started here, with our students. More than 500 student athletes competed under the Owls banner last year. But to me, I don't see a 500 number. What I see is 500 plus individual stories. Students who found a team, students who found a coach who believed in them, students who found a place where they belonged. The strength of this program, isn't because of one person. It's because coaches showed up early and stayed late. Teachers supported our students. Families drove to away games. Nurses and healthcare professionals cared for our kids. And community partners invested in us. And most importantly, our students kept choosing one another. I also want to acknowledge something important to me. This program did not begin with me. Owls Athletics has a history that was built by the coaches, by the staff, the families, alumni, administrators, and the community members who invested in Highland Park students long before I arrived. Year one builds on that foundation. And I'm incredibly proud of how far we've come. I'm even more excited where we're going. There are more students to reach. There's more barriers to remove, more opportunities to create, more programs to grow, and more young people who haven't yet, discovered what being an owl can really mean to them. Years from now, I don't want our students to remember how many policies we wrote, how much equipment we purchased, or even how many games we won. I want them to remember that when they were students at Highland Park, really they mattered. That's that they were seen, that someone believed in them, that they belonged. Because to me, listen, the scoreboard eventually turns off, the season eventually ends, the uniform eventually gets hung up, but the lessons, the relationships, the confidence, and the character our students gain through these experiences, to me, last a lifetime. That's the state of Owls Athletics, strong because of our students, strong because of our community, and stronger because of what we're building together. Thank you for all of you for believing in our students, supporting our programs, and giving us the opportunity to keep building something that they can all be proud of to call their own. And kind of going into this year, always remember student first, athlete second, and Owl always. Thank you.
All right. Thank
Question?
you, Dr. Mortellaro. I'm going to open it up to the board if they have any questions or comments. And I'll take notes, Dr. Mortellaro. So if
You
there's questions along the way that we can't respond, I'll make sure to follow up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? I can't hear me. Okay. So I do have a number of questions. So when you said you created a handbook, who was involved in actually creating that handbook? Was it all stakeholders or?
Yeah, the handbook was everything I do is, I love collaboration. That was a district-wide initiative that actually started, I would say, a month after I kind of stepped foot into this role, realizing that having a handbook that helps guide families and our students, teachers, coaches through the various policies, because we get bogged down. There's new policies and state and local and district, but kind of guiding them through it. But so I've had meetings with Dr. Suska, with Denise, with teachers, coaches. As we developed that. So it was certainly a collaborative process with that.
So, and are students ever involved in creating, like helping create the handbook or getting ideas from them? Or?
Yeah, a lot of and those that are here know me. I'm a very hands-on, active. I don't like setting up, necessarily meetings with kids. It's my relationship on a daily basis is very engaged with our students. One in the first year, really, it was important to listen, ask them questions, see what they want more of, what do they wish was in place, but also seeing throughout the year things that needed to be in place to guide our kids, hold them accountable, and really set that culture and foundation, for a program. And I felt that incorporating everybody's, input really built this document that helps build that foundation, and protects all of our kids and our coaches, and guides them, what the expectations are, what they're accountable for, their actions, both on and off the field, and kind of streamlining. If you ever saw the NJSIA kind of handbook, it's like 400 pages and nobody's going to go through it. So shortening and condensing that down to the pertinent stuff so that it's readable and accessible for our community and parents and students.
Okay, we'll take turns. Who else has a question? Then we'll go back to Nikki's set of questions. Ann?
Yes, I have a question, specifically around uniforms. I know that, during the budget, you had hoped that we would be able to just start fresh with all new uniforms for everyone. Unfortunately, the budget could not support that this year. Could you tell us a bit more about how you're standardizing the uniforms? Is there a standardized policy for what comes with a uniform now? And then also how you prioritized which teams got new uniforms this year versus who's going to get new uniforms next year?
Yeah, so when we look at, in this case, uniforms, to me, it's really about equity. That was a big thing of coming in and we saw some teams had Nike, some had No Name, some had Rydell and Russell, and kids were asking why they have Nike, we don't. So obviously, a perfect world would have been getting everybody the new uniforms, all same brand, extra quantities. This year I prioritized with the highest really expense to get it out of the way. Football, I think it's been, and Coach Harrison could correct me, probably about 15 years, 10 to 15 years since they got new uniforms. In fact, the company they had on them, it doesn't even really exist anymore. And that was our largest expense, to get that out of the way, in hopes, again, looking at a district budget, that in reality, I'm hoping that we don't need that full, I think, 25,000 over the 3 years, and then we can look back. So football, in full transparency, was about $20,000, this year for uniforms. That includes home and away. But at the same time, it wasn't just football. I was able to work to get girls volleyball new uniforms. And my hope is next year we can get at least the majority of the remaining teams. Baseball was able to get new jerseys this year, again, through their team fundraising. So again, trying to negate where, district relying on district budget so much, but it was, this year was primarily on the cost factor to say, hey, let's get football out of the way. They're most expensive. And then hopefully year two, pretty much every other program might be able to be completed, on that. And at the end of the day, hopefully year three, I could say, hey, let's reallocate, maybe any remaining, the 25,000 in year three towards other things to grow, our program, or add anything additional.
Can you just piggyback on that too, about the idea of what comes with a uniform? And I know we've been talking a lot about streamlining what would be district property versus student property.
Yeah, so uniform to me, obviously a lot of our teams, they only had one uniform. Kind of mind blowing that we didn't have home and away, especially when, if we only have one color, the standard across the state is the dark color, whether it's maroon, black, is always the home jersey. And then you have a white jersey for the road, so that teams don't have the same uniform. I know, thing that, I've met with Denise numerous times throughout last year, of saying, how do we kind of prioritize what's a uniform? So things that we get back, I feel should be the responsibility of a district budget. Now there's things of part of a uniform, and I know a hot topic has been socks. Okay. When we talk about socks not being covered by a district budget, that's not a cost cut, right? That's really a reallocation towards higher impact needs. Like I said, I reviewed the budget with Denise, department wide, and not just, line items. And what I'm trying to do with the budget is move away from these targeted line items that, if you do the math, let's say 500 athletes that, I mean, listen, every sport needs socks, and you're looking at, let's say, $10 a pair through our vendors. You do the math, that's, $5,000 or so every year for socks that we're not getting back. The kids are keeping them. So it was a low cost kind of item, for us and for families, and especially now as we increased our team fundraising, to cover. And, the team fundraising, so it's not just, hey, we're not covering socks, you're on your own. I specifically talk to the coaches and say, hey, this year, we're not going to be covering socks, but here's your options, right? Here, the budget's not doing it, but now you have an option through your team fundraising. And, I presented, for an example, football wanted socks. Well, Coach Harrison used the team's fundraising money and purchased, 75 or 50 pairs of socks, black and white, that he wanted for the season. I presented that, boys soccer reaches out, they want socks. I say, hey, well, you could use your team fundraising that you have, or the students are gonna have to, buy it with the families. And the coach decided to get warm-ups for the team instead. Two different choices and two valid choices, and that's kind of how my role is really, and especially when it comes to the team fundraising, is the coaches are the advisors of their teams when it comes to that money. I kind of set the ground rules, make sure it's all compliant in what they're doing, but I don't tell them what to spend that money on. To me, the team fundraising was a goal so that kids can take something with them that they remember when they leave here. Anything the kids get from a team fundraising, I know football got backpacks, t-shirts, soccer got track warm-ups, the varsity jacket, whatever it is, those kids keep. That's, donations from family members, community, that's for them. But it also, once that's done, if there's left, that's also can go back to a program to elevate it, to another level of getting those extras of what really raises from managing 25 different programs to elevating it. So that's kind of.
Ethan?
Well, I think this is really, really great. I think it's, we started the meeting, Dr. Siska's first presentation was about incidents that require removal from the classroom. And it's clear the district's made progress over the past several years, really dramatic progress in reducing student behavior that would lead to removal from the classroom, kind of incidents we don't want to see in school. And we talked about particular reasons, different programs, and teacher training, and just culture, a changing culture in the schools. And I got to say, hearing you talk, it's easy for me to believe that athletics is part of that. I think we don't have the stats here, but perhaps it's aiding with attendance. I can see that this attitude about teamwork, collective effort, being socialized, influenced by your peers to act the right way, to be a stand-up person, be respectful with other people, sportsmanship. It doesn't stay on the field. You carry that with you into the classroom. And so I think, as a board, we have made important investments in athletics over the past few years, including, your hiring. And to me, it's paying off, not just in wins and losses, which I love. You didn't mention wins and losses, not once. I didn't hear a single word about, oh, we're 10-2 or 5-6, whatever. Doesn't matter, right? Matters is people participating, coming to school, being excited about being an owl, and that having great impacts on the whole culture of the place. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And going on our data for the chronic absenteeism, I am working. We're trying to work through Genesis to build reports for I gave you guys some national data, but I'd love to see our data. So once I have that, I will share it with the board so that we could kind of see our numbers, because that's just as important. Kind of seeing, is it tackling, if it's still high, how do we kind of, and everything we do, right, we reevaluate it, we adapt, nothing's set in stone. So any policy or anything, if it's not working, we go back to the drawing board and say, hey, why is it not working, and what can we do to start seeing some of it take effect? So thank you.
Nikki?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So this is kind of a two-part question, I guess. So I like that you're doing the biweekly reports of like how the students are doing. And forgive me if I missed this part, but when it comes to like if they're not doing well, is it something where they're getting support rather than penalized, or how does that necessarily work? And do we, or do you know if we keep track of like student athletes and academics and how that correlates with each other, how they're actually doing?
So the goal of that biweekly academic reporting, it's not to get kids in trouble. It's not to suspend them. It's really closing the timing gap, right? By the time report cards either come out, we catch a problem, but it's often too late to fix it. I've encountered just this summer realizing that there's fall athlete that failed a class, doesn't have enough. The NJSIA sets a credit limit. You need 30 credits the year prior to be eligible for the fall season. And if we're catching them in middle to end of July, how do we get a kid through a summer program in time for August, or even the end of July, start summer workouts, and then the season starts in August. So it's really just to provide a checkpoint is really how I look at it. And before that student athlete loses the eligibility or falls behind, to me, being a student athlete at all levels, I'd want to know, let's catch them when they're maybe in a low 70, not when they're at, a 60, and let's intervene. Let's help them. And I know every coach, every teacher, every administrator to pull a kid and say, hey, let's do some extra work and get your grade up. It's okay if you miss practice today. If they have missed practice to do extra work, that is never a punishment to them. They're not going to not play. And it has to be a collaborative thing of bridging the gap between academics and athletics. They should never, ever operate as two separate ecosystems. The term is student athlete, and every student in my program knows you are a student first. And if you're not doing what you need to do in the classroom, you have no business being out on the field. We call them extracurricular activities. It's a privilege to be out there. It's not a requirement. So and it also ties into just having that biweekly report where we're also going to collect that data on absences, to fight that chronic absenteeism. The teachers will fill out how many times this, and over that 2 weeks, were they late to class? Were they absent? And if the data shows, yes, is it going to be a little bit extra work on our coaches, on our teachers? At the end of the day, if the work, shows that it isn't really worth it, okay, then we change how often we do it. Again, going back to a more fluid policy. Hey, I'd love to say all of our students do the biweekly thing. They got no absences, no lates, they're all passing. And if we see that for a year, okay. But it's also important to have, again, collect that data, know that it's showing them, hey, we're holding you accountable in the classroom first. You have to get this completed. And now they're saying, it's not just hey, my report card didn't come out yet. Coaches or Dr. Mark won't know how I'm doing in class. And then I'll, obviously they turn that in. Some ways, either Google Classroom on an assignment tab, or they can physically hand in a hard copy. And my plan is, I know this has been trickled out with some coaches in the middle school, but could be a huge plus for high school, middle school, and not just student athletes. But I think, and we've had discussions about even doing this for all of our clubs. Again, clubs or athletics are both extracurricular. And unfortunately, if you're not passing school or certain classes, you shouldn't be participating in extra stuff outside of school until that, is where it needs to be.
So it sounds like they're getting supports, like doing athletics is actually more supportive for them, not just in sports, but also academically.
Oh, 100%. Our students know if you're not in school the day of a game, you're not playing. Obviously, if it's unexcused. If you're late, coach and I have a conversation. The kid may not, if it's unexcused, late, may not start the first quarter, or whatever the kind of punishment that we think it is. And we're seeing our athletes know that, hey, and we see that in athletics across the nation. It sometimes is why kids come to school. I remember there's times I didn't want to go to, a class in high school, and I said, oh, I have a game. It brings you through the door and gets you there. So like I said, going into year two, my focus, year one was build that foundation. Year two is now bridging that gap of athletics and academics so they, work together and not as two separate, entities. Yeah.
I have Sarah online that asked some questions and then Allison. So Sarah, Dr. Pixley,
Hi, Sarah from the
Hi,
sky.
let's go.
Thank you so much. So a couple of just comments and then the question. So one, I learned a lot. So 500 kids, and that's a third of the district participating. That's just I didn't that's a number to note. I think when thinking about how many folks are impacted by the program. Other comment too. I really appreciate the explanation of the uniforms because things can certainly feel inequitable, especially when there's other pockets of money, right? When folks are fundraising personally, and so to understand a little bit about the principled way in which you're thinking about it, I think that all makes a lot of sense and also to hear that the football team hadn't had uniforms for 15 years. I'm very glad they were prioritized because it seems like that was a good decision. I'm curious about. It seems like there's potential. We've served 500 kids at this point, and you're creating kind of a greater pipeline that the programming expands. And so my question would be really a budgetary one in how do you think about the growth and how we can kind of absorb that growth? Is it is it something that we'll look to more fundraisers, or I'm just curious because it's very well that this is going to expand and we'll have more students coming and then maybe potentially greater needs.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Great question. To me, when I think it sounds like we're talking about like internal versus kind of external funding. And we kind of talked about this. The district funding should really cover what it takes to run that specific program, safely and consistently. Those aren't really, the transportation, the officials, the uniforms. Those aren't operational really extras. They're what it takes to operate that program in a consistent manner and make sure it's, again, everything we do, that it's sustainable. The external funding, so whether it's the team fundraising, the grants, boosters have been a tremendous support, donors. Again, that's what elevates the program from that baseline of what we need to maintain it. So the additional equipment, the training tools, facility upgrades, and how do we grow that program? And just some examples of that. Boys and girls basketball worked collaboratively through their fundraising efforts to get a Dr. Dish machine, which is an automatic shooting machine. You shoot it and it kicks it back to you. They pitched in and were able to get that. That elevates a program. That's not something I'm going to come to the board and say, hey, we really need this to run this program. And then, as we grow, I think that line gets a little clearer, new program basics. So, we factor in the official costs. Those are rising every year. Transportation, you all know the price of gas and insurance rates go up every year. So that's kind of how we look specifically on the internal, external. I'm going to rely on the board and the district budget to maintain the baseline level needed for a program, but to elevate it after the success of year one, I think we turn to a lot of those grants, boosters, donations, fundraising that helps elevate, a program where we need to be.
Allison?
All right, thank you. Dr. Mark, thanks so much for putting this presentation together. I know that we had asked for an update on the program a few months ago, and we really appreciate you coming out and spending so much time with us tonight. My question is regarding student and parent voice. You've had a lot to set up this year. Obviously, expanded on the foundation that was already here. And I'd like you to thank you for, addressing the fact that we have had athletics for quite some time. And, we're taking it to the next level now, but, we've had a community that's been very strong and supportive of our athletes. And I want to just thank you for extending that thought. But also in terms of student and family voice, I know that you say you speak to students one-on-one all the time. Have you thought about integrating more formalized processes like anonymous surveys or focus groups or anything like that as you continue to improve the program and grow the program?
No, great question. And, I have thought about it, and it's definitely something, we are, considering. There's a lot, left to do. We were getting off the ground, building, again, that culture and foundation, and moving forward, getting more of the community feedback, especially parents and various external stakeholders is pivotal to what makes this run. I mean, you saw, whether it's the state or local communities or individual people, 148,000 invested into this. So it's important to bridge that, bring them into a lot of the conversation, and especially, parents of our student athletes, letting them their voices be heard. And I'm all about accepting, feedback. What I do not always have the right answer. I'm never 100% correct. And I love, constructive conversations where sometimes, a light bulb goes off. Oh, great idea. Let's see how we can incorporate that. So definitely something as we continue, into year two as we develop, for sure.
Right. Oh, Francisco?
I have, Dr. Mardelar, thank you so much for all the work that you've done this year. I wanted to highlight something that you highlighted that you said wouldn't make any headlines, but I think that the actions that you've taken on the sports medicine slide that you had there and the safety precautions that are put into place. I wanted to thank you for that. That's clearly something needed and important. I did your mentioning of the neck injury and your stabilization thereof for a period of 45 minutes, you said, before.
That's correct.
Before a
Back hurt the next day, yeah.
And it made me think back to a safety committee meeting that I crashed my first month here, where the response times were an issue. Is the response time still an issue in your opinion? And is there anything that we could do to improve that? I know that you were looking into some options earlier in the year.
No, and I am proud to say, and again, thanks to the board and Dr. Suska for, again, everything we do. Nothing we do will ever jeopardize the health and safety of not just a student athlete, but a student. So after that, I immediately, I think the next morning, I was bright and early in Dr. Suska's office and said, hey, we have a problem here. We need to address it. The season, there's a game that week, their first game. And were you in attendance? I think there were a few people in attendance that got to witness it, and we were grateful to be able to again partner with RWJ Rutgers EMS, the same EMS that covers Rutgers home football games. And if you've come to a game, you could come Friday. Dr. Womack will be there. I'll be there. EMS ambulance is backed up onto the grass, and in fact, there's two EMS with the stretcher on the sideline right next to us. That understand hand signals. So as medical professionals, there's certain times you're out on the field and you can't shout across the field. So we all know hand signals to summon a stretcher, face mask removal, whatever it is. And that problem has been quickly resolved. And going into year two, we still have that relationship, and they'll be here Friday night. And they were here last Friday for our scrimmage, the EMS. So yeah. So thanks to the board and Dr. Suska for helping me prioritize that for sure.
Nikki, did you have any additional? I wanted to circle back. Do you have any additional questions? Okay. Anybody else on the board? Any additional questions? Miss Danielle, go ahead.
So I did have a question regarding the response time. So when it comes to coaches and assistant coaches, do they have any kind of extra training to just in case something happens, or just to notice some things, because not medical people can't always see everything and the coaches are always right there. So do they get any kind of extra training for something like that?
Yeah, so all of our coaches are CPR certified and AED and first aid. Going back to, it was important and it really didn't exist, was our emergency action planning. So What an emergency action plan is it has all the direct lines. So if you're at Johnson or Donaldson Park, has the hotline for the park ranger. All of our coaches that are on external sites have portable AEDs. You'll see them around the facilities, the gym. I have to get over to Bartle. I know some of our kids practice there in the winter. It's a QR code, and the emergency action plan starts with a general one with all of our facilities, addresses, contact numbers, has emails for myself, Dr. Suska, the school principals, has their office numbers, obviously 911, you scan it, but also in that emergency action plan has sudden cardiac arrest and heat illness prevention. So all three are incorporated into that one document. Now, since, I think last board meeting, we just got those approved for this year. And those are all in collaboration with Dr. Womack, obviously. But the next step of that, now that they're kind of implemented, and each coach, I tell them all this year, I started giving out medical kits to each coach, especially the offsite coaches. So they have basic first aid stuff, Band-Aids, ice, gauze, tape. But it's important now to do annual reviews and run-throughs of that emergency action plan. So again, I can't just give a piece of paper and say, hey, here it is, emergency action plan. What is it? And now, so there have been times, where we are in the future going to run through scenarios, maybe even have EMS here and Dr. Womack. Hey, how do you treat an athlete that has a seizure? How do you treat an athlete that may have a neck injury in practice and I'm not here? There are a few times where, I go to all the away football games and we may have a home, let's say volleyball game, and a kid gets hurt. All of our coaches know if it's that bad, I always tell them you call 911. If I'm at the game, I usually tell them 911 is your first call. I think we had an issue down at Donaldson last year, softball. A girl on the other team, they thought they dislocated her ankle. I was I think I was away or at a baseball game. I couldn't get down there fast enough. I either guide them through it on the phone, the coach, and tell them call 911. That scenario actually led to revamping the emergency action plan a little bit. I realized, we never put the park ranger hotline on it, because 911, notify the park ranger, they're all trained. But certainly, as a medical professional for 20 years myself, it's important to rehearse over and over until even if it's CPR, where are the AEDs? Unfortunately, we are working to try to get an AED out on the football field. There's not one out there. So I carry a portable one myself, but what address to give 911 when you call them? Hey, is it 102 North 5th? Are they going to end up in the front of, the high school? No, you have to guide them. Hey, go behind the school, drive right onto the field. So rehearsing it and certainly setting them up for success. Again, it should be already ready to go. And that's what we talked about, not something in the works when an emergency happens. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's such a huge investment
Mhm.
in athletics itself, but in our students.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions from the board, that concludes my report. Thank you, Dr. Morlero.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to the first public comment period of our evening. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board Policy 0167 establishes and regulates the right of the public to participate in public meetings. And so is there anyone here in person who would like to make a public comment?
For those who'd like to make public comment, please state your name and address for the record. If you're a student, all you have to do is give your name.
Nicholas Kambitsis, 459 Lincoln Ave. I'm a proud graduate of Highland Park High School in 1983, a few years ago. Not a great public speaker, but I'll do my best. Back in the day when I went here, Highland Park was known for excellent academics and even better athletics. And you were proud to be a Highland Park Owl back in the 80s and 90s. And I'm not here to criticize anything, but something happened after the 90s. So when my kids started coming here 10, 12 years ago, I was not exactly, thrilled with where athletics were. understandably, not here to criticize anything in the past, but I can honestly tell you that Dr. Mark is being very modest. The change that I saw this year in the community atmosphere at games, the kids' smiles. I have a senior. Well, I had a senior. He's going to Rutgers this year. And the starting basketball team were all kids that I raised through various programs. And to give you an idea, they may have not been the best athletic basketball team, but our starting five are all seniors. They're going to Rutgers, St. Peter's, Monmouth, and Meridian. So I'll put these boys up and what Highland Park has done for these kids against any other town. Dr. Mark, my daughter was having issues this year. She was a freshman with 4 senior girls. It was not easy socially for her. Dr. Mark facilitated a meeting with the coach and her and made things so much better for her. And she was able to enjoy the season. The boys would hang out in his office all the time, smiling, having a good time. They really, truly enjoyed their senior year. So Dr. Mark is doing an amazing job, but obviously I want to thank the board who hired him, Dr. Suka who hired him, but without your support, he can't do the job. So I hope you continue to support him. Again, he's being very modest what he did this past year. There's no doubt. I know she's very happy when she saw flag football possibly for the girls. He's really done an amazing job. So I can't say anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in person who would like to make public comment? Okay, how many people do we have online? But is there anyone online who would like to speak? If so, raise your hand. Okay, in that case, we will end this first public comment period. There will be another opportunity for public comment after committee reports.
Oh, I just want to add that I know some of you have had incredibly long days, especially some of the staff that are here and Dr. Morlero. So feel free to excuse yourself if you do not want to stay for the rest of the board meeting. But it is riveting and exciting. That's my promotion for it. But feel free to excuse yourself without concern or issue. Good luck.
Okay, then.
There's no takers on riveting and exciting.
Yeah.
This is
My marketing strategy.
Well, I heard Francisco's going to start tap dancing at these
Oh, is that what it is?
one time randomly. I don't know. I think it's going to be a little surprise.
ignore exciting.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to board committee reports. Dan, you want to start with curriculum and instruction?
Sure, although I feel like my audience just escaped. Thank you for that. I thought I actually had someone who's going to pay attention to curriculum instruction.
The song or dance or something.
You don't want that.
Okay.
You really don't. For curriculum instruction, we met on Thursday. We talked about the access results that were just presented, so I won't touch on that because we just saw that. We did look at the benchmark data from the end of the year, and I believe we'll have a presentation on that coming up. So I'm not going to say a ton on it, but I will mention a couple things. Dr. Suska mentioned that NJSLA data will be delayed this year. Usually we get that over the summer and can present on that. We're not going to get that until maybe December this year, which actually puts us in a hard spot because we actually use that for placement and that kind of thing. So that puts the district in just using that data to kind of place students in a very different position than we're usually in. And that's because the DOE did a different implementation this year. So we have our benchmark data from the end of the year. For ELA, scores were more or less similar to a year ago. There were some shifts in who is on or above. but generally, if you look up who's on or above kind of grade level, those numbers are similar. So sometimes there's a little bit of shift on, there's a little more on above, but a little less on, but those numbers are pretty similar. For Irving, the numbers actually look really strong in ELA. They look, I would say, similar at Bartle, except for there's a dip in third grade, where it seems like students haven't moved out of that kind of well below category a whole lot. And so that's a bit of concern. At middle school, the numbers actually look really strong, where every grade level is at 66 to 69% in the meeting or exceeding. And so that's really promising. One thing to note about those numbers is teachers have been working with a coach for, I think that was just the end of the third year working with the coach. And last year in particular was individualized kind of support for the teachers to really kind of strengthen ELA. So those scores are the reflection of 3 years of kind of dedicated professional development around reading, writing, and then kind of individualized kind of implementation for the teachers. And so the numbers look really strong at middle school. And so I just wanted to note that seems to be, or at least one of the factors was the teachers and really taking to that training and having a dedicated coach to support them. In math, the fall assessment is a pre-assessment, so we really kind of compare the winter to the spring. Scores look really strong at Irving again, I would say second year in a row. They look comparative to the year before at Bartle, except in fourth grade, but we've had fourth and fifth grade are departmentalized. And so there was, I can't find my word, but we actually had a disruption in a teacher. And so there was a lot less consistency in fourth grade around math instruction. The middle school scores actually look really strong. Next year, just something to know, at Irving and Bartle, with the adoption of a new math curriculum, we'll be using the clear math scores, so they won't really be comparable across years next year, but we will have a consistent assessment. We also will be able to use Linkit to kind of track individual growth, which we're not really doing right now. So the comparison from year to year won't be really available. We'll be able to do that kind of moving forward from there, but we will have a consistent assessment, and we'll have individual tracking through Linkit, similar to what we can do around English learners. So that's it, just a summary of the benchmark reports, and generally it looks pretty good, except for a couple spots where we think we could improve. We also talked about the policy on electronic communication devices. This has been updated to reflect some feedback from high school students. In just a kind of summary, student storage at Bartle and high school will be on the student. So that means that cell phones have to be turned off and stored in backpacks or lockers. In the middle school, there will be lockers specifically for the cell phones. One other thing to note, I think this is, yeah, sorry, that's in the wrong spot, but there was a shift in discipline in the policy due to reflecting what we've done in the past compared to what SMA Strauss was put in their kind of recommended policy. In this version, a first offense, the student is sent to the office to lock up the phone. A second offense, the parent or guardian has to pick up the phone. A third offense will require the student to leave their phone at the office each day. And a fourth offense will make the student lose their open lunch privileges at the high school, and specifically. incidents where teachers had to address phones last fall dropped significantly, and we think it's important to track this and make it public in an upcoming meeting. So that's something we're looking at doing to show incidents of discipline in classrooms before the policy last year, and then eventually track and report on that regularly. And then, yeah. That's it on the policy. For field trips, there are a number of different field trips, including visits to Von Thune's farm, the Highland Park Public Library, and a tour of HP businesses and community spaces. We have been talking somewhat regularly about technology on the committee. This is somewhat in addition to the cell phone policy, and just thinking about students taking home devices, because we've heard from some parents that those devices could be used for brain rot activities, and don't have a better word for that. LineWise is actually issuing one free device monitor per student. So this gives parents the capability to set rules around home device use, which is a really nice benefit. The district will have a rollout of the new of this new kind of functionality in September. It'll also be in the back to school message from the superintendent, in addition to emails to parents. So this is to allow parents to kind of monitor and you know, change the capability of those devices when they're brought home. And so that's a big benefit from LineWise, and I think response to some of the parent concerns about students bringing those devices home. And there are two items we're voting on. One is the field trips, and the second are teaching internships and practicums for 5 students from Rutgers. Any questions?
Sarah from the sky, can I say something? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just to kind of double tap on that LimeWise, Dr. Suska went really deeply into, I think folks are going to be really happy with that, and the communication plan that we'll be rolling out. And, you know, it does address some of the things we've been talking about for a while. We also gained some information on the kinds of data that we can actually collect. So I think we have more of a thoughtful way that we can actually think about assessing and moving forward. So I think you'll see more of that kind of shaping up in the next couple of months, just for those on the line that really care about the technology piece. The other thing I would just say or note is there was a lot of, over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of PD and training for ELA, and that was one thing Ms. Rodriguez mentioned was you know, kind of helping to close that gap, just to make it an extra double tap that, you know, we will be rolling out, as you said, Dan, it's a math implementation K-5 for the first time ever. And so I do think what we'll want to do is think about how to track and monitor that and have kind of a plan as systematic as we did on the ELA side. And just a note that I'd love for us to kind of continue to, we talk about it all the time, but if there's ways, you know, maybe there's a certain time that it would make sense for us to report back how it's doing, for example, at some time that made sense for the district. But just calling out that that's deep on my mind, and I think we've put so much thought into the ELA, and now we're going to have to think about the math side and be methodical about what we track and communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're thinking about that professional element long term, just like we've been thinking about some of the ELA support. So yeah, that's important with the new curriculum for sure.
This is just a quick question. Did we ever get the data for high school for this past year, 25-26, about the devices versus disciplinary? Because I know we were looking for that at the last meeting and we didn't have that. Do you know if we have that? Does anybody?
For the high school, I think it's coming. I don't, yeah, just ask.
Yeah, so the Dr. Donovan started the spreadsheet, And so they're working on filling it out now. So we'll be able to have that for you. And it'll be month to month. So similar to what we do for the discipline reporting, it'll do month by month. So you'll see that for both middle and high school, but they're both the middle school and high school are going back to last year and working on filling it out. So they're trying actively to get it done. I was hoping to have it by tonight, but they're still working on opening school, opening the buildings and stuff like that. So they're trying to balance a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
So it wasn't actively tracked last year then?
It was, but it wasn't tracked in like a comprehensive way that makes sense for our consumption. So it was tracked because I know the high school specifically uses it for their school improvement plan. So as part of their annual school plans for the title funding, they did have to report on it. But the way that the federal government wants it reported is not the way we would probably want to read it. So they're reorganizing it in a way for our consumption. So the data is there, just putting it into the spreadsheet so that it makes sense to us is what they're working on. Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, are you done?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Sarah, this guy. Yeah, so we had the second reading of the policy and the regulation on cell phones tonight. I voted no last time. It was a good discussion last week in curriculum and instruction. There are a few things I was pleased to hear. First of all, it may seem like a little thing, but the regulation will be that cell phones in the high school need to be turned off and then put in the backpacks or lockers or whatever. That's a nice, that I think that's important. I'm happy to hear that because I think just a vibrating or buzzing cell phone can be very distracting. Obviously very pleased that we're keeping the boxes in the middle school. I think athletics is part of that story, potentially. I think that the dramatic improvements in the culture in the middle school, who knows, could possibly have to do with a cell phone. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. I do think that we need to be getting data over the course of the coming year on whether there are a lot of cell phone issues in the high school. So I'm glad Principal Donovan is working on that this past year. We'll get it for the coming year. We can hear that. Ideally every month, every meeting, if there's a system for reporting, so we can track it like we do these other kinds of things. I think if it emerges that there are more incidents than we would like to see in the high school of people on cell phones, the alternative is obviously some kind of magnetic pouch system where if you are an open lunch, that's a privilege. You need to pony up, what is it, $15-$30 at the beginning of the year, buy yourself a pouch, put the phone in the pouch when you're in school, when you go to open lunch, someone demagnetize it. Anyway, it's one idea, but I think I've heard enough. And also I asked, okay, why aren't there boxes in the homerooms in Bartle, given that most students in Bartle stay in one room the whole time? And Dr. Susk said, well, there just isn't a problem. The kids, the cell phones aren't really that big a thing, and the teachers are really on top of it. So I think I've heard enough, even though if I were in charge of everything, I would do it differently. But I've heard enough to feel good about voting yes on the policy regulation second reading and looking at data over the course of the year.
See, and I'm kind of the opposite of you right now because without data, like hard data, it's really hard to make a concrete decision on whether it was even working in the first place. And it's really, as it reads right now, it's not really much different than the way it's been. Just turning off a cell phone, I'm sorry, it's not banning a cell phone. And I'm even going to add Chromebooks at lunch are also an issue. So I know I was going one way at one point, and now that I've re-looked at everything, I'm well, oh, you can still change your mind.
I mean, I think this point about getting the data and seeing how it is being enforced in the high school is going to be extraordinarily important. We want to make sure that it's being enforced equitably and across the board, because part of the reason that we went through all of this process in the first place was we had a policy that cell phones had to be away and it wasn't being enforced. And we don't want to be in a position where we have a meaningless policy again, right? So I think coming back and reporting to the board and whatever we can make public is going to be extraordinarily important. We have to have a bell-to-bell policy before the beginning of the school year. I think my feeling is that it's entirely reasonable to move forward this way with these continued check-ins to make sure that it's actually being enforced. We've heard from, some students, right, that even last year, especially at the beginning of the year, there were much fewer cell phones, but more would pop up as the year went on. And so I think that's going to be really important as we move forward.
And just to piggyback on that, like I said, I think if it was a really significant issue, I trust that Dr. Donovan and her team would have made a different recommendation if she thought that it was a problem that it, couldn't be managed through some leadership and expectations and communication. So I have trust in the judgment of the staff there, because it's not just a Dr. Donovan decision. It was made in conjunction with her parliament and her school leadership team. So, other support staff and teachers in the building and student input. So I feel strongly about the recommendation and, that we'll monitor it very closely. And if we see that, it is an issue, then we can certainly make an adjustment as needed.
I think it's going to be really important to get feedback from staff.
Yeah.
About how the enforcement is happening.
Right.
Because that was one of the major concerns, is that teachers didn't want to be responsible for policing this. So I think getting that feedback as well is going to be really important.
Okay. So I have a question. Like, if it wasn't being enforced before, what makes us think it's going to get enforced now? Like, and it's really not fair to put an onus like that on the teachers.
Well, I mean, it was when she said it wasn't enforced, we're talking prior to last year under previous administration. So before all of this came out, when we adopted last year, before that, when you looked at our regulation, I was like, oh, hey, we actually have some regulation around this, but previous administration just wasn't being enforced or being enforced consistently. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for, consistently. So I think last year when we went to an instructional ban only, that was super helpful, but again, wasn't entirely strong. So the difference now is it's full ban. So the students aren't allowed to use them at lunch if they stay on campus. They're not allowed to use them during study hall. They're not allowed to use them in passing time or anything like that. So, and they have to be turned off and put away. So there are some changes, but I will say last year was definitely better than previous. So again, I think that sort of speaks to it, that and I think that's what Anne was trying to say. The previous, there was one. And when we looked at it, we're like, oh, so what's the problem? Why aren't we why aren't we actually doing what our regulation says? So I think that's, paying more attention to it, has been helpful. And like I said, I think, the teacher voice too is really important there. And again, they're part of the decision-making process through the school leadership team and central leadership team. So we'll definitely report back some of that information.
Okay, equity and excellence.
Sadly, I have nothing to report this evening. We have not met since our last meeting, but we will be meeting on September 17th with lots to discuss.
And facilities and finance, Allison?
Hi, everyone. Yep. Okay, I'm ready. So facilities and finance met on August 11th. It was myself, Christina, Denise, Mr. Flanagan, Francisco. Ethan joined us, a special guest, and Marilyn, of course. I'm going to go through our first discussion was mainly about the athletic budget analysis that we did, or actually we can't take credit for it. It was all Denise. Thank you so much. She spent so much time putting this together for us. And we compared the 24-25 budget with the 25-26 budget. Now, this was just looking at the athletics department. And this was based on some requests that we had gotten from the community through email. We, as a committee, reviewed it, and we have no concerns about the budget increase or how the funding was spent. We do, however, recognize that the communication about the impact of hiring an athletic director was not great. Because there was a number thrown out, there was 30,000. And what that doesn't take into consideration is how other line item budgets will kind of fluctuate based on so many different things, like how many games kids are attending, whether we needed to buy, athletic training equipment so that we can have the athletic trainer do the job here with us. The fact that salary went back into instruction. So I'm going to kind of go over that a little bit more in detail now. So in the 24-25 budget for athletics, there was about $554,000 allocated. However, $499,000 were spent. So the 24-25 school year saw that they did not spend all of their funding, and they underspent about $55,000. So we need to keep that in mind. The athletic budget that was allocated for 25-26 was $637,000, and I'm rounding. What was spent was $653,000, and that's about a 31% increase from the 2024-2025 school year. So again, there was about a 31% increase in the amount spent on athletics, just the athletics budget. Now, when we look at why this occurred, there are a few things that really stick out. One, the previous athletic coordinator, half of that individual salary was deducted from the athletics budget. The other half was deducted from whatever budget line was instruction. So now we have a full athletic director's salary being allocated to the athletics budget. So you're going to see about 120% spike in that line item. We also collapsed the athletic training duties into the athletic director position. So you'll see, what we saw was that there was actually a decrease in spending on athletic training. Was there still spending on athletic training? Yes. And that is because we needed substitutes for when the AD couldn't be there. We also had a big increase in transportation. We had athletes attend way more games this year, and that required way more bus rides. One example that we had was that there was 26 varsity games that were additional this year than in previous years, and that just counts varsity, not anything else. So we in that transportation number, we see about a 59% increase in that budget. We also had about an 18% increase in the cost for tournament fees, the banquet that we had, technology and tools. We did have to invest in athletic trainer supplies, like I said earlier, in order to be able to have the athletic training done in-house. So there was about a 70% increase in that area of the budget. We actually saw a decrease due to the addition of volunteers and student positions. So there was about an 18% decrease. And then I'm trying to see if there's anything else that really stood out. There was $11,000 in the budget that was actually for a wrestling mat that was purchased the previous year or ordered the previous year, but we didn't get the invoice to this year. So that's something also to keep in mind. So overall, we do see, like I said, that 31% increase in the budget, mainly due to the increase in having a full athletic director salary that embeds the athletic training into it. That also takes into account raises along salary guides for all of the Schedule B coaching positions and everything that we have year to year. So as the years go on, those folks get raises as well. And those are contractually mandated. So that also increases the, salary lines of the budget. That's pretty much I think the gist of it. Is there anything that I missed, Denise, in regard to?
You did great, Allison.
Thank you. I've been practicing because it's a lot. It was a lot to read through. But the bottom line is, four of us looked at it and we understand the budget increases. We understand where the money fluctuated. We understand where the money went. I don't think that we did a great job of communicating that impact. So definitely something that we need to keep in mind in the future. Um, in other news in facilities and finance, the Bartle structural repair is all complete except for some spray insulation that's on its way. The pre-K classroom is going along well and will be completed by the end of August as required by the grant. There is some bonus work being done to the Irving cafeteria, such as painting and new ceiling tiles, and fortunately, there's no additional cost for that. The high school cupola, they had taken drone footage to see the damage that needs repair, and we actually posted those on the Highland Park, I think the Instagram and Facebook page. So you can actually take a photo of what the damage, you can see the photo of what the damage looked like and what the intended repairs are going to be. And we have been the fortunate recipients of grant money from the Ida Kushner Foundation. And so part of that will be to dedicate the baseball field, to Ida. And that is going to be in early September. I don't have a date for that yet, but we are looking forward to recognizing the contribution from the Ida Kushner Foundation and through obviously HP boosters. There was a decrease in our lunch balance. We went from about 48,000 to 46,000, so every little bit helps. We are going to go over hold on, let me find my thoughts, the agenda items in a minute. I want to point out that the pre-K classroom does have a change order for about 4,100. That's within the expected budget. But I think, Denise, there was something that was unexpected. So we did have to reallocate, or I guess redraft some of that contract. Can you speak to that? I think that was the repair.
Yes, so there was an HVAC. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There was some HVAC additional work that was needed in the pre-K classroom. So they had to run vents for fresh air to get into the classroom through the roof that was unanticipated. So that's where you'll see that change order. So that change order utilized the remaining balance of our contingency. And we have to contribute another roughly $4,500 towards it, but it all came within budget because the bid came a little bit less than anticipated.
All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, so for our agenda items, number 1 is the bill list, 2 is our treasurer's reports, 3 is our board secretary report, 4 is our certifications, 5 is budget transfers, 6 is the travel and related expense reimbursement reports. Number 7 is the approval for the professional services and related services that are contracted currently. We have some speakers for drama club. We have some non-public summer reading intervention. And then we also have the mentorship program for administrators for our 2 newest administrators, Amy Coppola and Justin Grossman. We have number 8, some contractors for PD. Inspired Instruction is going to do a full day in-person workshop. Some non-public gifted and talented professional development. That's going to, Denise, actually, I have a question for you after this. And then our co-teaching professional development and coaching sessions that we have with Chana Lee. Denise, the non-public gifted and talented professional development, that is not us.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Through the
Not us.
non-public school for Title II.
Great. I see. Is it possible to put, you know how we have the school names in the other parts of the agenda? Is it possible to do that
Yes,
also in this part, like if it's under a different, I guess, item?
absolutely. We can add
Awesome,
that.
thanks. That helps cue me a little bit better when I'm going through it. The number 9 is also non-public. This is all non-public technology purchases. Number 10 is the approval of non-public security purchases. We are in number 11, continuing our contract for registered behavioral technicians and behavioral technicians or licensed BCBAs with Circle Care. And number 12 is the approval for salaries funded by state and federal grants. You can see those listed.
If I could add number
Yes.
12, there is a read-in.
Oh, great.
So under number 12, under Title I, letters E and F, Daniel Franklin and Taryn Waiter are crossed out. They're no longer going to be funded under Title I, but letter G has been added for Bhupinder Kaur to be added at $18,996. 20% of her salary will be allocated to Title I.
All right, thank you. Number 13 is tuition contract agreements for is it 2 students? No, okay, so it's 1 student. One was for extended school year and one was for this coming school year. We also have 2 McKinney-Vento contracts for number 14. Number 15 is the approval of 2 out-of-district placements. Number 16 is approval for that change order that was discussed. Number 17 is approval to approval of quotation to install the volleyball sleeves as part of that local recreation grant and to replace the Bartle gym divider as well as part of that grant. And that concludes facilities and finance. Are there any questions?
Comment? Okay. So Allison, I agree with Denise. That was amazing. I'm not going to try and, sort of repeat or emphasize anything because I think you said it perfectly. And thanks to, Denise DeRosa for putting this spreadsheet together. I just want to, say there has been questions raised in the community over the difference in the amount spent in athletics in 2024-25 versus the past year. And, does that indicate any issues with, our accounting or our budgeting? Those were serious questions. And I think any board that hears that from the community, especially when it comes over legitimate channel like email or something, formal email to the board, we should take that seriously. And I think we did take it seriously. We asked, Denise to look into it, to put together a very detailed, careful, and analysis of spending the 2 years. And like Allison, I asked some tough questions. It made sure I understood it. I do think I understand it, and I'm satisfied that there's nothing is improper. It makes sense if you understand that money is being taken out of certain pots and not others. And so I'm very happy that this issue has been looked at, clarified, and I hope that it's taken as evidence that this board does take transparency very seriously. And we would certainly encourage anyone out there in the community to keep asking us questions, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, I thank you, Ethan. In retrospect, I wish that we had a better handle of where the budget would go with a full-time athletic director in the beginning, so that we had the ability to, tell the public a little bit more about what the potential impact could be. But I think also a lot of that depends on the decision-making that comes with the role. So, I'm glad that we cleared it up, but I can definitely understand why folks may have been confused and worried about where the funding was going. Any other questions?
I just have a quick comment.
and it probably might sound silly, but I'm very excited about the replacement for the Bartle gym divider. It is so needed, and I mean, they need the space, and it's a safety thing too, and it's just very exciting.
I'm not quite as impacted by the divider, but it sounds like it was needed, so I believe it. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Denise and the committee for putting together these numbers. I think it was concerning when we were hearing that we're going to be spending 20 or 30,000 more, and then seeing this difference. So I think that was just a little surprising. Yeah. So, and then I think it makes sense looking at these numbers, but I think, you know, given the communication and then seeing the much larger difference was concerning. Then, you know, thinking about the transportation costs going up and what that was about, and not having some of those answers, I think it makes sense that the public was concerned about this. And it is a you know, big difference in the budget. Some of that is explained by spending, you know, $50,000 less the year before, right? And so that makes this difference look even larger. But I think seeing some of these numbers, you know, initially was a little bit surprising. I think it makes more sense seeing everything kind of broken down. But I think, yeah, I understand the community's kind of concerned with those numbers, but this actually, I think, speaks a lot to where those come from and why. So thank you for this.
Allison, are the numbers that you kind of went through, or is that something, I mean, you've read them off. There's not a public documentation for that? Is that just kind of your summary?
That was from what was sent to us from Denise. It's attached to the committee report. I don't know to what degree it can be public. Maybe Denise and Christina can answer that. But if people would to request anything that could be public of it, they would have to go through the Oprah process.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, if that was available. And yeah, I just agree. I echo. I mean, even just the basic of that, a partial of the salary was not even allocated in the budget, because part of it was covered through, you know, the instructional component. I mean, that explains a lot right there. So anyway, appreciate you all.
And I just want to clarify that document with the athletics breakdown, that's just comes out of our budget documents, right? Like, that's publicly available information on our website. So. To personnel, we have approval of 3 leaves of absences, medical leave, parental leave, and a paid administrative leave. We have approval of appointments. We have a change of date of a new hire coming on, the high school nurse coming in a little earlier. We have high school, a sophomore advisor, Schedule B, and we also have a middle school girls soccer coach. Thank you so much for doing this work. We have 3 hourly positions to confirm, and a number of volunteers who was primarily around running baseball camp this summer, which is really exciting. So thank you for your service. We have approval of an Inspire Instruction workshop and coaching. We have after-school treatment team meetings. Approval of maintenance overtime. Approval of instructional assignments. And we also have a read-in, which is the transfer of a autism teacher from Bartle to Irving because of an increase in the autism population at Irving. We need to open a second classroom, second K-1 classroom. We also have one policy and one regulation on second reading, which is the student use of internet-enabled devices. Okay, so now we can open our second public comment section of the evening. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Is there anyone online? Okay, Rob?
Yes, my name is Robert Scott, 25 South 2nd Avenue, Highland Park. I have a question with respect to technology and curriculum and instruction. Recently, Google has rolled out the Gemini button as the opted-in default in Google Docs. I checked at Rutgers, and Rutgers students who Rutgers contracts with Google, that button is enabled by default for all Rutgers students. I know that the Google Docs are used by students in the district, and my question is the Gemini button now enabled at the bottom of all Google Docs for all students as a default? Or has the district been able to stop Google from doing that? I ask the question because the role of AI in the classroom has, of course, become a major issue in education today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anyone else? Okay, in that case, we will close the second public comment section and move on to board action items.
For curriculum instruction, I move items 1 and 2.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassell Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Finance and facilities?
Yeah, Allison, it's you
Oh,
for finance.
oh
and
my gosh, I
facilities.
forgot. Yes, sorry. I move I move numbers 1 through 18.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassell Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes. Okay, for personnel, I move action items 1 through 7.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassell Dunn,
Yes to all, abstain from 1C.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes, but abstain from 1C.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes, but abstain from 1C.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and then for policies and regulation, I move action items 1.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassell Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes, sorry.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
No.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes. Okay, then we can move on to board liaison reports. Does anyone have anything to report?
I do not.
Neither do I. Okay, then if nobody has a report, then we'll move on to old business.
Can I say something for old business? Or is there somebody in person that would like to go first? Anybody? Okay.
Go for it.
All righty. So just a quick note. I know that we've spoken about this a few times in the past, but every year we have these, the mandated discipline report that comes from the state. And I think that we could try to, as much as this report is very fixed and mandated, and the language from the state is very fixed in terms of how these things are reported and coded, kind of be careful with how we speak about the students that are engaging these behaviors. One term that we've used in the past that keeps coming up, and I've done it myself too, is repeat offender. And I find that that language is like very, I don't know, punitive and sort of labeling. And so in regard, I know Ethan brought it up and it was been in my mind in terms of the restorative practices, trying to extend some of that to how we report out on discipline as well. There are a lot of different ways to describe students that repeatedly engage in behavior, even if it's just saying a student has repeated offenses. I think that that's probably a more restorative way of presenting the discipline data. I wish that the mandated report kind of allowed us to go deeper into all of the other things that we're doing. But that's just one of the things that I wanted to bring to our attention as a board. I've done it too. And, very often I have to catch myself, but it struck out to me tonight. Thanks.
I had something also. Just we hadn't heard from the Conmengo report. I'm just wondering if we can get a status update at that. And sorry if I'm saying the last name wrong. If we can get a status update on that at some point.
Yeah, coming next month. So John and Sarah will be coming next month to present their findings to the board. We thought September would be a good time, given that everyone was back. A lot of people might not be present on vacation, things like that. So September would be a really good time. So they're coming at the end of September to give that report. In addition, Amy Capola and Ashley Raywood will be joining us to extend the report for their action items. So we've had time to really unpack that report, do some action items. In addition, John and Sarah joined the leadership team meeting for a training to actually go over the report a little bit with us at a meeting that happened last week, in addition to provide some training to the team around inclusive educational practices as well. So that will all be to your inboxes next month.
Great.
And then I have another old business. So it's regarding the technology. I'm just curious because obviously it's too late now, but if we can take a look at how Chromebooks are also affecting students at recess, specifically middle school. I know I've had a number of students mention that to me, and I told them I'd bring it up tonight. Because even without the phones, Chromebooks are still technology. And also, what if they drop it?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because I worked with Stephen Lupus and Caitlin Brady this summer to put together some good work about that on how we can sort of think about the use of it. So I know that especially at the middle school, Ms. Brady's going to have a whole rollout on limiting the use of all technology during unstructured time. So coming soon. I don't know if I was just a spoiler alert, but coming soon. That is. So I think these are some really great conversations that are happening, and so all these nuances of things that these great conversations sometimes don't always make it to your plate, but they are happening, and the team is really thoughtful around decisions that are made, and so that is something that we've been working on all summer. So spoiler for middle school, Ms. Brady has a whole rollout. Specifically with the Chromebooks, and we're going to take a real deeper dive into that during central leadership team, and we'll do more thoughtful communication around that too, in terms of the implementation, how devices are being used across grades, maybe 2 through 12 or 4 through 12, and making some considerations on that use and things like that.
Thank you.
There's your spoiler.
Okay, any new business? Okay, in that case, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.